want to talk about childhood. Today, I want to talk about some of the stuff that happened when we were a kid in relationship to our parents. And why is that? Well, it's because I just spent one weekend in Paris with my son. Now I'm back in Belgium, and I realized how an intense weekend it was. I realized how we had an amazing experience. I am a huge fan of Paris Saint-Germain. Therefore, my son also is, has no other choice, right? And last year, we went to Paris to watch the last game of the season when it comes to the championship. And we didn't go to the final of the Champions League for obvious reasons, right? Money, because those prices for the final are quite high. And this year, I also didn't think about going to the final, but I was like, I can actually go to Paris with my son, and that way we are going to experience the final from there, you know, the dynamic, the party, and especially if Paris wins, well, it's going to be an amazing party. So I decided to go there with him, and initially we were gonna stay in the center of the city, right? I wanted to leave it from the center, but then I remember that last year people went a bit crazy in the center of the town, so we decided to stay like 15-20 minutes away from Paris, and from there we watched the game from a gymnasium. And if you do not follow me on Instagram, well, make sure to go check because I posted a few videos there in my story, but also a reel. And you can see that we had an amazing time with my son. You can see that it was really a bonding moment, you know. And when I was looking at all those videos, I couldn't help but think, oh man, this is what I wanted to experience with my dad as a kid. All I wanted was that. I wanted to experience those moments with my father so bad. Not necessarily to attend football games, but just those one-on-one moments with my dad. See what I mean? I don't know how it was for you when you grew up, but I can only remember of two one-on-one moments that I have with my dad my whole life. Only two one-on-one. I'm talking about two joyful one-on-one moment that I had with my dad. We had other one-on-one moment. That's when I was acting crazier with him. Hello, welcome from Russia. So I don't know about you if you had one-on-one moment with your dad growing up. If you actually had those moments when you go to the restaurant with your dad, you're only the two of you. When you go maybe at the football to kick the ball, only the two of you. If you had those moments where you could actually have conversations with your dad, I didn't have that. I can remember the first time that my dad wanted to have a conversation with us, me and my brothers. He woke us up at like 2 a.m. in the morning, but it was about like to blame us for something. We were like, you know, you're a kid, you wake up at night, your dad is talking to you about grown-up stuff. So when I went to Paris this weekend with my son, all the joy that we experienced together, my son is 10 years old. I felt so happy, and I was like, this is what I wanted to experience with my dad growing up. And I didn't get the chance to experience that. But I also realized that if my dad was 1 second what I wanted he to be, I wouldn't be the dad that I am now with my son. So it means that my dad has had to be exactly who he was for me to become who I am. And if my dad was what I wanted him to be, I wouldn't be the dad that I'm becoming now with my son. Isn't it crazy? Because sometimes we have those things that happen with our parents when we are kids. We grow up and then we end up blaming them for what they did or what they didn't do. But when you reach the point where you realize that everything happens for you but not to you, then you can appreciate what happens. So as I was having those great moments with my son, my inner child also was being happy, because in a way he was experiencing it with his father, even though it was me being the father at that moment. See what I mean? And as I dropped my son to his mother today, my son hugged me and said, Dad, thank you. Thank you for this weekend. It was amazing. You know, it was one of those feelings that money cannot buy. It was one of those truly like happiness moment You see what I mean? And I was happy that I got the opportunity to experience that. Because as a father, sometimes I tend to be heavy on myself. I tend to blame myself for things that I'm not doing. Although I'm doing my best with the information that I have, with the courage that I have, but still there's more that I can do. So I don't know about you. I don't know how it was with your dad. Maybe it was with your mother. But the message is, we don't even need to forgive anyone. Forgiveness is a myth. We don't need to forgive people. We just need to love them for who they are. We just need to accept our parents for who they've been. Because they used to be kids as well. And people also did things to them. And they became who they are based on those things that happened to them. You see what I mean? So when you're able to understand that each person used to be a kid, doesn't it solve the understanding of everything? If you have the capacity to see your dad for the 6 years old that he used to be, and then you can see your mom from the 9 years old that she used to be, then it makes a lot of sense. The father I've only known passed away when I was 35. Then my biological father reached out to me right after his passing, and I was so confused. It took a while for me to understand. We are all good now. Hey, Natural Beauty, thank you for sharing this vulnerable message. I am so happy for you. Honestly, think about this. We live inside a rock that is spinning on itself, right? Spinning on itself. And inside that rock, you have 8 billion humans living inside. So it means whatever is happening, every single day, it has to be like that, for that whole thing, that whole rock to keep spinning. Things have to be the way they are. So I'm really happy that you get to experience this joy with your biological father, and I hope in a way it has helped you understand, what it is that you're here to do, and what also he went through in his life in order to be the dad that he was. Maybe I'm not saying this justify anything. I don't get the full scope of what happened, but if you can see him as the 5, 6, 7 years old boy that he used to be, I think for sure you're going to understand what happened in order for him to maybe not be in your life and then come back later. So everything is by design. Everything is literally by design. But in my message here, I always bring the fact that you create your life despite what we learn growing up, despite what we heard from other people, from society, from our teachers, whatever. You create your life with your thoughts. And once you decide the type of thoughts that you want to entertain, you can really shift things. Some people told me to be upset with my biological mom and biological dad, but I couldn't. I was just trying to understand. Well, sometimes people want to push their emotions on you, or they want to push their story on you. I think wanting to understand is amazing. And then once you can love them for exactly who they are, and I'm saying this, I wasn't even aware that I was holding grudges towards my dad for many years. I swear, I wasn't even aware. When my dad died, I didn't even cry the day when I heard the news. It was like, it was in 2014, so Uber wasn't there, but it was like someone told me, your Uber has arrived. I was like, oh, he died? And then I went on my day because the disconnection was so real between him and I. The man wasn't taking care of us financially, emotionally, wasn't present at all, And when I would look back at the data, I would mostly see all the fucked up things that he did. It took me like 3, 4, 5 months to cry in the arms of my girlfriend back then, like, oh my God, my dad is dead. I'm about to be a father, but my dad is not there anymore. How am I going to learn to be a dad if my dad is not there? Isn't it crazy? When my whole life I thought he was just no one, a nonsense, a failure. And now that I am a dad, the things that I'm going through, now that I am a husband, the challenges that I'm going through, I just wish that man was here for 5 seconds. For 5 seconds, just so I can be like, hey, dad, what should I do? You know, isn't it funny? Because now when I have challenges with my wife, I don't appreciate the idea to asking friends how to navigate, because yes, they might have the best intentions, but are they taking care of themselves? The information that I'm going to receive, is it going to be for my highest good and the highest good of my marriage? And the most important thing is to have the business of me and my wife out there in someone else's brain, not knowing what's going to happen after I leave. So I wish my dad was here so I could just, ask him all the questions. At least it's my dad. Even if he gives me advice that I don't like, I'll be like, yeah, it's my dad, It's the one that I'm supposed to ask advice from. So I'm glad that you didn't listen to what those people told you, Natural Beauty. I don't know if you ever heard of release letters. I don't know if you ever heard of them. Let me know in the chat if you heard of them. But basically, release letters is a process from the universe, from source, from God, through which we can release negative energy attached to the relationship that we had with our parents. And believe it or not, I wrote my release letters more than a year ago, like before I married my wife. And that period was really tough. We come from two different backgrounds. People in the family didn't necessarily agree with us being together. But when I did my release letters, I wrote it one to my dad and one to my mom. Things just started shifting faster in my life, to the point where the wedding went like sweet, the perfect wedding, the perfect union. It was such a day of joy. So I highly encourage you to also do your release letter. I put together an ebook where I actually explain how to do the release letters, what to put in there and stuff like that. So if you're interested, make sure to, number one, follow me here on YouTube. And when I'm gonna publish this live, I will add the link towards that ebook. It's going to be free, okay? Just so you know, it's going to be free. And I'm gonna name this video Relationship with My Dad / Release Letter, okay? So that's how I'm gonna name this. Relationship with my dad. It was a tough one. It was a tough one. As long as I can remember, my dad, sometimes I search for him in my memories. I don't see him when I was a dad. A few years ago, I asked to my mom, I said, Mom, how come I don't see dad in my memories? She said, yeah, dad wasn't there because he had another woman in another city, so he was always gone. I was like, damn, do you see how we are shaped? Do you see how we are shaped? Because your memory do not go back consciously to those years of 1, 2, 3 years old, right? I was like, I don't see him that much when I'm a kid. But then you wonder, how do you create then a connection with a father that is not there from a young age? And that's why I'm so blessed to have this relationship with my son. So I am so blessed to have a son that can open up to me. I'm not saying that he's sharing everything, of course he has stuff that he doesn't feel okay telling me and stuff like that, which is fine. But I'm glad that I have this relationship, that I can have this impact. I'm doing push-ups, he's doing push-ups, I'm reading books, he's reading books, even if the reading is coming from his mom. So I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful. So make sure that you write your release letters. Make sure to check the link in the description, and you take the ebook. It's actually a workbook. so that you can, release those energies and make sure that you go through the summer with infinite possibilities your way. Okay, it's easier than you think, but